I'm joined tonight by my friend Matt Sienkiewicz, Professor Matt Sienkiewicz. He is the. Should I give you your? Yeah, I'm so used to giving you giving them your. Actually, Matt, you know what? Unfortunately, you're going to have to unmute yourself from your side now. I didn't realize that I couldn't unmute you. There you go. I'm so used to giving your full title.
Yeah.
But it's kind of we're laid back now. So I don't want to introduce you in your official title, but he is a professor at Boston College. But you know, he's a friend, and we've hung out when I lived in Boston, and glad to have you on the show tonight. How's it going, man?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, Ben. It's nice to be on. Yeah, no need for the title. I didn't put on a tie. I hope that's all right.
That's okay. I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt, so you're in good company. You're in good company. But it looks like I caught up with you, man. I don't know if you watched last week what happened to my hair. It's an interesting story, but it looks like we're matching on a lot of fronts. I mean, if people didn't see color, we probably could look like brothers almost.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you wouldn't confuse us for each other. But if it was like a description to like a police sketch artist, and they left out one or two things,
right?
We might come out more or less the same here. Yeah.
Right. They say a bald guy, bearded, you know, stocky, you know, all those kind of things. Just leave out the racial complexion, you know, the colors. You know, we'd be good.
Guilty. Yeah, no question.
So you know, it's hard on nights like this where, you know, you and I were just hanging out, and most people, it's hard because of what's happening in the background. In Texas, near San Antonio, Texas, where 26 people were killed. And I'm finding out today that of the 26 killed, about 14 were children. Yeah. The youngest, I believe, was 14 months. And then you had 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 14-year-old, just the whole range of people killed by Devin Patrick Kelly, a 26-year-old who from a neighboring town, who, I mean, we'll get into the politics of it, obviously, but the reports are indicating that this was a domestic violence. He had an ongoing dispute with his mother-in-law, and his mother-in-law was a member of that church. And so it seems as though he went to either kill the mother-in-law or to cause the mother-in-law so much pain because the mother-in-law wasn't there. And thankfully, she wasn't there. She wasn't one of those that were killed, but so many other people were killed. And there's a lot happening with that story as it still develops. But I mean, we can't start tonight, even with everything else that we want to talk about. I couldn't start tonight without discussing that a little bit. Matt, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any thoughts about that?
Oh, just that it keeps the recurrence is just it's obvious, right? We say it every time. We get outraged. We hit the standard brick wall in terms of you know, on the legal side, there's nothing we can do about it. It fades away, and then it comes back again. It's, I mean, you know, what can we say except it's you know, it's a terrible tragedy that probably doesn't need to happen.
Yeah, I'm working on a it's funny you should say that. Like, so this morning I got this new thing that I like doing, and it's really just like literally a hobby. I'm not really taking it serious, but I'm starting to do more of these political horror stories, kind of like really short snippets. And one of them I'm working on right now, as a result of this morning or yesterday's tragedy, is the fact that no matter what happens, we have the same exact debate. People say the same exact things, and no matter who is killed, we say the same exact things. We on the left, the Democrat side, progressive side, liberal, however you want to label us. It's a broad spectrum, but we say enough with the prayers, enough with the well wishes. And that in and of itself has become as cliche as hearts and prayers and thoughts. And now we're saying, well, enough with, you know, and we just go back and forth, and it doesn't matter who it hurts. We just keep saying the same thing. We're stuck in this vicious loop. It's almost like a time loop, but every time it happens, it's a brand new set of people, brand new communities that's devastated. But the people who could make a difference, Matt, they're saying the same thing. Oh, we're extending our hearts and minds and our thoughts and prayers. And then we say, oh, shame on you for all, that's all you always say. And ultimately it becomes a dance. Even though we say those things to try to break up the dance, it becomes a part of the dance. Almost like the last time you were on Like It or Not with me, you were saying people who try to challenge Donald Trump and to break free of his reality show almost get sucked into it, and they can't help it. Go for it, man.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, some sense to trying to censure ourselves for giving the same response, right? Even if that response is correct and logical, right? If the response is this is the only country in the world where this happens, there are similar societies that have many parallels, and yet this is not. Canada being sort of the prime example. They've got lots of guns, and this doesn't happen, right? We can say this over and over again, right? And it's true over and over again, and it's not getting anywhere. I mean, there's two conclusions you could draw from that, right? One would be that it's hopeless, right? That the system is so entrenched as such, and the other would be maybe we need to try something else, right? Even if it's a desperation pass, right? Even if it's a Hail Mary and it's got a low odds of succeeding, right? We should try other strategies. We should think of different ways. I mean, first to talk about it, and then hopefully to organize around it in some fashion. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's the same thing. The response, the snarky, thanks for the thoughts and prayers response is,
cliche
correct.
At this point. Yeah, it's correct. Yeah,
right.
And
it's no more effective. And I agree with you on that front. I wish I had a clever idea as to what to do, but I am somebody who believes in discourse, and this tact goes nowhere. Right, the tact that sort of says, the Republicans are in the pockets of the NRA, and we'll make fun of that and hope that that somehow changes. That's not working. So I would be interested in a different discursive strategy personally.
And that's the thing. What do we actually do? How do we actually change this so that this doesn't? I mean, okay, let me put it in a very dark sense.
Can't get darker, Ben. So go for it.
So then who has to die?
Yeah.
Who has to die for us to finally say we are going to do something about this?
I mean, it's not a congressman getting shot, right? It's so we've crossed a lot of barriers of late, and historically we've crossed them all. I mean, if Newtown didn't do it, you can just list it, right? I mean, and that is really, I don't really want to, but I think it's necessary to talk about the willful and amazing ways in which, not insignificant parts of America can either ignore it or like develop a fantasy, a false world, a set of lies that allows them to ignore it.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can see Newtown happen and then have a legitimate legitimate just in the sense of it having some power, a real sort of political movement based around the idea that this was somehow fake.
Yeah.
Right? If Newtown can be dismissed that way, and this will be the same case, no question. The dark response to your dark question is it's hard. It's impossible for me to lay out something which would be more horrific than what we've seen. So I don't know who has to die. I mean, who could it be? Who's left? What
I know
who's left to be assaulted.
Man, you hit that on the head, because and that's when I realized after Newtown, that we'll never do anything about this, and we've accepted this as normal. I mean, of course, there's so many different angles politically that has to be discussed about this, and to everyone who's in the audience, we're going to get to Donna Brazil's article again, because there's been some significant changes over the weekend. Not changes, but there's been some significant updates, particularly a large set of lies that we have to discuss. And Matt, I don't know, I don't want to make you too uncomfortable with it, but I mean, I'm sure you'll, especially from a media perspective, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of interesting things to say about it. So we're going to get to that in a minute, but we have to talk about the politics of this. Two things in particular. One is almost the cliche, right? I'm falling into this trope. I'm falling into the exact same thing that we do all the time, and that's note the hypocrisy of Donald Trump. And to see, and not just Donald Trump, but conservatives in general, and how they react so viscerally when the perpetrator of a horrendous act is either a Muslim or a person of color or someone that falls outside of their political worldview or preferred political worldview. And then we see how they react to Las Vegas, where, it was basically silence and, let's not politicize it. And then we saw yesterday where, all Donald Trump did was extend his heartfelt wishes and deepest condolences. And then to one up it, they've actually upped the ante a little bit. And now they're saying this is a mental health crisis, right? So that's the new thing. Paul Ryan brought that out over Las Vegas, but now Donald Trump is bringing it out over without any evidence. He's just saying, that this guy had mental health issues when he didn't. It was just unfortunately, a domestic violence issue. But this is how they respond, right? They excuse away anytime it's not a Muslim, or anytime it's not something that they can categorize as Islamic terrorism. They are very kind, very gentle, very, let's not politicize it. But as soon as it's a person of color, as soon as it's someone, God forbid, they is Muslim or Middle Eastern descent, they don't even have to be a Muslim. They could be a Syrian Christian for that matter. And if their name is Muhammad or Ahmed, just because of the region they come from, then it's going to automatically be, labeled something as terrorism. That requires extreme vetting. Go for it, man.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, to deny the racism of it seems pretty hard to do, right? I mean, if there's more to it, it's a matter of profit, right? It's a matter of advantage, and it's just a question of what gain is there for somebody like Trump or somebody like Paul Ryan to maybe suggest that American masculinity, particularly sort of that including the white America, whatever. It's kind of a stupid construct, but it's one that's in play, right? Including white America has a serious problem dealing with violence, dealing with mental issues. I mean, I wouldn't, of course, anybody of any race who takes such an action, I would like to believe that there is an approach that could have been taken to deal with whatever mental concerns, right? At least ideally, you should try. There is a mental illness issue, certainly, but it's part of a culture, right? It's part of a culture which includes, and in this case, seems awfully concentrated around white American men.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a quick question as a side. As a white man.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever asked you a question as a white man. As a white man.
I don't know if I've ever been, but go for it.
But generally as a white man, how do you deal with the idea that white men particularly with mass shootings, actually, let me just cut to the chase. How do you deal with the idea that is just everywhere, right? Pervasive, that white men are the problem and white men are no good and white men are da-da-da. And I'm actually saying this from let's say someone from the alt-right. The alt-right is pushing this idea that, white genocide, white men are hated, white men are not, are endangered and all this kind of stuff. White men are seen as evil automatically. Do you ever pick up on that? Because what you just said, the words that you just said kind of fall into that trope. And I'm curious, as a white guy, how do you see those ideas?
Well, the first thing is that when it comes to the alt-right, like this little guy I wear in my head is a big issue. So we can talk about Jews and whiteness, but it's relevant to my personal response to the question, which is, of course, the alt-right. I'm the Jewish guy who walks around wearing a skull cap, right? Like it's. So that's but that said, I mean, typically there's no question, right? I'm seen as a white guy. God, it's a tough question. I mean, when it comes to some of these things, it seems so foreign to I mean, I don't come from I don't know if I've ever seen a gun not on a police officer up close, right? Like I've certainly never shot a gun. And that's not exactly what you're asking, but I'm saying that these things are really, really sort of far from my particular culture within it. But so I mean do
you want me to get more specific?
Well, no, I mean, I'll try because it's it's a fine question, and as you're careful about on your show, right? We don't have one identity, right?
Exactly.
And I can be in some context, the fact that I'm a Jewish guy is very important, and in others, walking down the street and have the police look at me or whatever, the whiteness might take over, right? Might be so. Look, I would. This is my confessional, I guess. While my politics are very much, at least I like to think that the defensiveness of white men is something that I don't like. Right. I mean, certainly there are moments where I sort of have sympathy for some of the burdens that I see. White men being asked to face. That sounds ridiculous, but in terms of oh God, this is so hard to talk about. Like when I see Harvey Weinstein, right? Like when I see men abusing their power, and I think, is that being associated with me because of my superficial connection to it? These things don't compare to structural racism in my mind, or things like that. But I do sort of, I guess, feel I put upon is not the right word, but when I hear, when I hear that white masculinity is the problem, yeah, that doesn't feel great, right? That's a tough thing. I mean,
well, that's what made me ask, right?
Yeah.
Because you brought that specific thing. Do me a favor and check your text messages real quick. You brought that specific thing up, and so I was curious. And the camera's on me. I wasn't gonna bring that up. I don't know if it matters. But
it's funny.
To your right.
Yeah, I know where it is now.
So anyway, that was one of the reasons I asked the question, is because of how you phrased that, and you phrased it in a way that I completely identify with, right? So there, and the problem actually exists in the Black community too, for sure, right? The Black community, we have a toxic masculinity problem too. And when I hear, I'm not gonna lie, like, I think people who know me, I never even said this, but I'm sure they can believe it, is that when I hear that type of thing about Black men, or Black men are trash, or Black men are dangerous, and I cringe. Right, I cringe, but then I have to look at some of the facts and some of the data, and some of the things they say are true, and some of the things might be over the top, whatever. So I was curious from your perspective, how that strikes you. Not to detract from your bigger point, even though I kind of took us on a long tangent. Circling back, those thoughts. Where were you? I don't know if you can even pick up where you left off, because I took us way off on that.
Back to what? Where are we going back to?
Exactly, right. So I lost myself. So back to the issue here, right? So the overall question in terms of the problem, right? How this is being cast politically is something that conservatives they're trying to take advantage of, in the sense of, or won't rather take advantage of, similar to how they would if it was Muslim, right? If it was somebody of the Islamic faith. And in this case, you're pointing out that the real core of this issue was almost the hyper masculinity, or the toxic masculinity that's involved, that because this was a domestic violence issue.
Yeah, right. I mean, the profit to be made, right? The scared, the right people don't get scared, right? If you focus on that issue of toxic masculinity, right? And that's, if we look at look at the election in Virginia, right? And how much Gillespie talks about MS-13 or whatever, right? Brings up the things, violence and problems, but why focus so disproportionately, right? Because the right people are scared, right? It either brings out scared people to vote for you, or it suppresses votes in general. Getting up and talking about toxic masculinity, which is absolutely at play in this, right? That would be to address an actual issue, right? That would be somebody it would take a statesman. Right, it would take somebody with an interest in, actually getting at the issue. All right, and brave enough to realize that you might lose some votes. Right, you might lose a lot of votes. Yeah, and I mean, we rarely see this. Right, we see who does this. Chris Murphy in Connecticut sort of got the cover of Newtown to do this to a certain extent. He does probably more than others, but it seems crazy that it takes bravery, right? It takes certain bravery to step up and say, clearly, when you have so many cases of younger, mostly white, some middle class or lower middle class men taking similar actions, then we probably have something systematic that we need to address. Right. Yeah. But that is talking to you are bringing into that question. All of a sudden, you're making a potentially painful reference to people's to your voters' children. right?
Yeah.
Your voters' sons, your voters' sons-in-laws, or your voters, right? If you're
Yeah.
talking about particularly Republicans in the middle of this country, but all across the country. And so it's the worst thing you can say about it is that it just seems completely unforeseeable that anybody would get up and make a stateswoman like address saying, screw it, I don't care, I'm going to lose some votes, I have some faith that there are other people out there who will respect this. It's just it added on top of the sort of awful state of affairs is the fact that nobody will touch it.
Matt, and that's what's so sad, man. What's so extremely sad about this is that it's going to require not just one magnanimous person. It's going to require multiple magnanimous people, particularly Republicans, right? Because Democrats would jump on something for gun control. Well, we believe that they would in a heartbeat. But it's going to require so many more people that we're back to where we were at the beginning of this conversation. I just don't think anything will ever change.
I wish I could be more optimistic.
Maybe we should change the subject because it doesn't look promising here, right?
Well, right. I mean, what's after, maybe Las Vegas looked so bad that you'd think, but as has been noted, right? How long did we? I don't know who we are. How long was
a couple of weeks, man.
Yeah.
Not even like just a handful of weeks that we actually care about. And I mean, I'm sure, and that sounds callous to say, but the news cycle has moved on. The news cycle has gone past that, and we don't even talk about it anymore.
The news cycle has moved on, and the political sort of discourse cycle never even got there. Right. I mean, like I don't remember. You get a few speeches here and there, sort of very, perfunctory kind of stuff. But there was no serious movement, right? There was there was a lot of, Kamala Harris reminding us that we haven't been talking about it, right? It's about the best I remember is sort of a few, and it's good. I'm glad that somebody's doing at least that, but it is kind of the least you can do.
It feels like all a game, man. It feels like not a game in the sense that they realize that they're actively playing a game, but it's a game even in a more terrifying sense that they don't realize that they're all actors on a stage and performing, like they're going through these rituals, they're going through the cycles. I'm sure some of them realize that they're just playing a game, but then the rest of them who feel like maybe they're doing something, they don't even, Democrats and all, they don't realize how cyclical this is and how much they're going to say the same exact thing. And I said this on my show, my main show or my daytime show, because this is my main show. I don't know what the hell that was. It just came out of my mouth. But this is I gotta correct that. But on my afternoon show, check your messages one more time. I said this and it's terrifying and it's sad. I don't want to wish this on anybody, but the sad reality of it, and God forbid, I mean, whoever you pray to, if you don't pray at all, I just hope that it never comes down any of our alley. But the reality of it is that the way this is set up, the way it works, the frequency with which it happens, it's very likely that we're going to be playing another level in this game. And before this year is out, that's the way it's going. And I don't wish that on anybody, but it's the grim reality that we're going to be repeating the same exact tweets, the same exact statements, the same exact performative behaviors. It's all going to happen again before the end of the year. And I'm just, wishing that I could be wrong. I wish I could eat my own words.
Well, I mean, so let's try, right? I mean, should you, let's say you and your progressive
army
cadre, right?
Progressive army.
Yeah, your army, right? Should you be saying this is issue number one, right? I mean, it's hard, right? Because you got a lot of issue number one.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So in that way, in that fashion, I'm a part of the problem. I'm a part of the game.
Yeah. I mean, but it's about prioritizing, right? I mean, if you want to do it at an electoral level, right? If you want to, then the best chance, even if it's a tough chance, is to say, look, the number one thing we want out of these candidates is for them to never stop going after the NRA, right? Never stop attacking Republicans on this issue, life or death, in a very immediate way. Right, but I totally understand that some of the other things that might get described as social justice issues are also life and death.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And in this current system, it is hard to foresee candidates who are gonna line up across the board on these concerns. And
you're right. Oh man, Matt, you just depressed me even more. You just like I'm even more depressed than I was when I started the show, because you're right. Because are we going to do the micro things that would make the macro difference? Are we going to do the daily, day in pounding, day in and day out? And to be honest with you, probably not. From me down to from me up to the president of the United States, probably not. I'll let you get the last word on this, and then we're going to shift gears and take some phone calls.
Oh boy. Last word. God.
Unless you don't have it, we could shift gears.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I go back to that last thing. I just, is this a top priority? Right? Because it becomes a top priority for a couple days at a time, and then I think even in the progressive world, even in the liberal world, it ceases to be a top priority. And maybe that's because there are other top priorities, but we should admit that, maybe, if that's how we feel.
Whew, man, that's a tough one.
It's rough, man.